Internet, hello you absolute lovelies. I just got out of Spider-Man Brand New Day for the second time, and this time I wrote down a bunch of Easter eggs, of movie references, of comic references, a lot of things that went into this incredible tapestry of a film. This movie itself feels like a blend of the best of a Saturday morning cartoon meets the best of the incredible Insomniac video game series meets the comics and movies themselves, all in the ultimate Spider-Man movie experience. Now, there's a lot of places you can check out Easter eggs and you can check out reference videos and all those things, so I want to do this one a little differently. I wrote them down in a note, and then I basically put them in different categories. So first, I'm going to give you my favorites, then we're going to go into thematic Easter eggs and references, then into a certain spoiler character and what that means for the MCU and those references, and then from there into the home trilogy specific references, and then MCU specific references. So this is going to be a run through in kind of categories, and then I'm going to give those some chapters. That way it's a more of a conversation. I want to feel like we're talking in the back of like a comic store or in the lobby of a movie theater or one of those conversations you have with your nerdy friends. Let's dive in, kicking it off with my favorites. This obviously is going to be full spoilers for Spider-Man Brand New Day. I almost said a character name before I said spoilers. This is your last warning. Spoilers, spoilers, spoilers. My favorite Easter eggs in Spider-Man Brand New Day included a bee rabbit Easter egg. That's right, Eminem is animated in this film in the background of the very shot of Spider-Man getting hit by the battle van. Now, this is not only the first appearance of the battle van in the MCU to my knowledge, but also the first time we've gotten Eminem to my knowledge. B-Rabbit and Spider-Man share a cover. There's a battle rap cover of Spider-Man battle rapping Eminem. And using that cover, they get rid of the Spider-Man half and they invert the image so he's facing the other way. But Marshall Mathers appears on a poster, a drawn poster. I think it's Salvador LaRocca, if memory serves, within Spider-Man. As a huge Eminem fan, this made me really happy. That is my favorite Easter egg in this film. Moving on to the next one, we've got the incredible comic recreation of Punisher carrying Spider-Man. Now, at this point, I wanted to wait to get this very spoiler-filled video out, but I'm sure you've seen it everywhere. There's a really horribly rendered AI version of it. It's gross and it's everywhere. But the actual moment in the film is so resonant because not only does it reference that incredible moment in Civil War, but it also references the first ever appearance of Punisher. In Amazing Spider-Man number 129, he is a full-on villain shooting at Spider-Man with that rifle. So we get two references in one with that incident occurring. We get the shot taking place in an all-new way, and we also get that beautiful Civil War homage shot, which turns into one of my favorite experiences in the movie, the bond between the two of them, that hospital scene. All that was incredible, but in case you didn't know, that shot of him carrying him is directly from Civil War with this image right here. Also, in that following scene, we canonically get John Bernthal napping. And that's the biggest villain of John Bernthal's entire experience. So he embraced both sides, as Jean Grey did. We also get the Hulk inhibitor, which we first saw in She-Hulk. We see this inhibitor that allows Hulk to be Bruce Banner and for him to be himself. But what I really liked in this was there is a serial number on it, and it's ASM-14. Amazing Spider-Man 14. That in 1963 was the first time Hulk and Spider-Man met. So it's a beautiful way to homage them meeting, and of course them meeting way back in early appearances of both of their comic book careers. Amazing Spider-Man 14 is an incredible comic, and it goes all the way back to that Stan Lee, Steve Ditko era. So a really fun nod to comic fans. Another great nod to comic fans were a few of the villains just verbally mentioned. We'll talk about the comic covers that I'm sure you've seen everywhere later on, but as far as verbally, there are two that I thought were really cool. In the opening montage, the Manfredi gang is verbally mentioned as what Spider-Man's been up to. He's been taken out. The Manfredi gang might not sound familiar. It's been referenced in a few things, but you probably know Manfredi from the much more popular Silvermane. Now, the character of Manfredi is Sylvia Manfredi, and he usually goes by Silvermane, Silvermane. But what I love is we just got him in Spider-Noir, played by the incredible Domhnall Gleeson. Brendan Gleeson. Domhnall's the son. Brendan Gleeson played Silvermane, and I just wrote down my crazy notes from the movie, so I'm pulling from my mind. I apologize. Brendan Gleeson, I think, is an absolutely incredible actor. I think he did a great job as Silvermane, but it's fun to know that in a Spider-Man Noir that came out like a month ago, we had the character represented, and in a multiverse, we get the gang itself being pursued by this universe's Spider-Man. Very fun thing with the multiverse being canon, as Peter 2 is also mentioned in this film. There's a lot of really fun stuff that have multiversal ramifications. Now, from there, we've also got Foswell mentioned, tracking the criminal Foswell. Now, Frederick Foswell is known as the Big Man way back in the day. Again, a Stan Lee, Steve Ditko, first couple years of Spider-Man era bad guy. He's around that Scorpion timeline, but he goes way back to when Spider-Man was just fighting like henchmen and guys that are like the Enforcers, and those type of villains don't really get to shine as much. So it's really cool to see Frederick Foswell mentioned, a character I never thought would be canon. I thought that was rad to throw back to the Big Man and that first era. Speaking of the early days of Spider-Man, that was the 1960s when we got both those ideas of the character to be introduced, but they also got an animated series back in the 60s, which was kind of Spider-Man's big first foray out of comic books, and the 1967 theme song, which still rings near and dear to my heart, is the song that chimes on the SpideyTracker.com app. So that 1967 Spider-Man, Spider-Man, which also appeared as the ringtone in Amazing Spider-Man 2, Peter 3's ringtone, if you will, is the beep beeps of the Spidey Tracker app, which is a real app, by the way. It's awesome. If you go to Spidey Tracker app or SpideyTracker.com, you can play in the app, and that ties into a post-credit scene we'll talk about at the end of this video, which is another section, just kind of how the film ends. There's some details in that as well, but I like that they used the 1967 song as much as I like the 90s awesome like Ramones jam. All right, from there we got, speaking of screen names, we got Grateful Ned 42. Grateful Ned 42 is the handle that Ned has when he's online, and that is a couple different things. Now, Grateful Ned is a fun pun, a portmanteau, no, it's a pun, for Grateful Dead. Obviously, it is a way to give a little bit of that, he's a kid in college discovering himself, so Grateful Ned, Grateful Dead, but 42 is in fact a Miles Morales reference. Now, Ned Leeds in this story is very much Genki. Genki is Miles Morales' best friend. The whole best friend storyline is very much taken from the Miles Morales comics, so I thought it was a nice homage to give that 42 as a reference to Miles. And in the comic books, that 42 is the spider that Miles Morales is bitten by. That's the marker on the spider to designate that spider. But in our life, in our reality, in our multiverse, that is Jackie Robinson's number. So in the comic books, that was referencing Jackie Robinson, a very formative pioneer and a man who changed everything in African-American culture and was one of the greatest athletes of all time. Miles Morales is a nod to that. And then we continue the echoes through history to have that be a reference not just to Miles, but reaching all the way back to Genki to bring us Ned. I love that reference. So Grateful Ned 42. We also have an incredible Ned reference in his bedroom. In Ned Leeds' bedroom, there is a Naruto poster. Naruto is the next film that director Destin Daniel Cretton is directing. So the director of this film is going on to Naruto, and there is a little Easter egg there. But there's another detail, if you think about it. Naruto is voiced by a bevy of incredible voice actors, but one of them, who voices Sasuke, is Yuri Lowenthal, none other than the Insomniac Spider-Man himself. There are a ton of Insomniac, the Spider-Man PS4, PS5 game references throughout this film. We'll talk about those a little bit more later, but a lot of the finishing moves, a lot of the style of this film is from that. So that Naruto poster not only represents the next film that the director is doing, but also is a Spider-Man reference-ish in itself to the Insomniac games. And then the last of my favorites, this concludes my faves. I wanted to give you guys my favorites right here at the very top. This is a deep cut, so follow me on this journey. The first ever appearance of Punisher was in Amazing Spider-Man number 129. That was written by Jerry Conway. He is the co-creator of Punisher. He also iconically did a lot of good Tombstone stuff, including the one that is referenced in the film, a cover I'm going to talk about here in a minute. But the third or fourth ever appearance of Punisher, because he appeared in 129. His second appearance was 135, and then I believe this was his third appearance in Amazing Spider-Man number 144. Punisher has a boat named Golden Girl. That is in the film. When you see Punisher in his lair, that boat he's standing on is Golden Girl, which is ripped right from the comics from his third or fourth appearance. And Golden Girl is also in the Spectacular Spider-Man that features Tombstone. So Jerry Conway wrote this story that goes across a couple different storylines that has Golden Girl as a boat that also features Tombstone. So we get a Tombstone, Jerry Conway, Punisher reference, all with Punisher in a bathrobe, standing on his boat, the Golden Girl. And those were my absolute favorite Easter eggs and references in the film. Now let's discuss some ones that break down into different categories. Let's talk about the thematic Easter eggs and references, because there is some really cool stuff they do here that affects the greater MCU going forward. Spider-Man invented the mutant inhibitor collar. Now, that is, throughout X-Men history, a huge bane on the existence of mutants. It causes so much harm, and I know a lot of people, we're going to talk about Jean Grey next, I know a lot of people have a hard time with the Jean Grey choices. I personally think they work for someone that becomes the Dark Phoenix, but we'll talk about that next. The mutant inhibitor collar is the Oppenheimer moment. It is the moment where you're changing lives forever. You're causing this giant thing. I think it's going to be interesting how Spider-Man is perceived by mutants if that ever gets out. How will Magneto see this Peter Parker kid if he's the one that caused so much harm? And it's really interesting to see all of this because the inhibitor was already in No Way Home. That seed was planted much earlier. We'll talk about that in the Home Trilogy section. But the way the consequences of this film are going to affect Jean Grey and Peter Parker are very interesting because Peter has just caused a giant blight for all of mutant kind for the rest of the X-Men films. Whenever we see an inhibitor collar, whenever we see a chained mutant, whenever we see someone imprisoned and can't use their powers, it is because of Peter Parker. And I think that's really interesting considering the comics they're referencing in this for Peter are stuff like Amazing Spider-Man 101 to 103 when he's experimenting on himself, and that causes consequences for Morbius and Lizard and those characters in his universe. In the film, they have that cause consequences for the X-Men and for mutants and things like that. So it's a really cool causality in the film for what Peter has done and how this will affect the MCU and especially X-Men going forward. So I think there's a lot to be discussed there. That might be its own video. If you guys want to see a video of that, please let me know. Also, I think they did a really good job with retroactively enhancing the Home Trilogy and the MCU in general. I loved that they give the discovery of Peter Parker's identity from Aunt May more context than just a really funny F-bomb bleep cut joke, right? Like, Spider-Man is discovered at the end of Far From Home and, Homecoming, and basically we get a cutaway and we never really get to see that conversation between Aunt May and Peter Parker. We now get to not only get a conversation, but it gets to be a beautiful power and responsibility parallel. So this is a reference to that trilogy. It's a reference to the comic books, but thematically it also gives Jean Grey a parent figure, a way to feel seen, a way to feel loved, all the warmth and nourishment that in the comics Peter gets from memories of Uncle Ben and some of Aunt May. They've really kind of turned Aunt May into an Uncle Ben figure, but all of those connections, Jean Grey gets to feel that warmth and that love, and I think that's really beautiful, tying in parents and family trauma and all those details. So saving that scene, I don't think they ever intended, obviously, for this to be how that scene comes to play, but I think in saving that scene, we get a really cool opportunity to have a reference to a scene we all wanted to see, and having that scene be resonant not just for us and Peter, but also resonant for the future of the X-Men and how Jean Grey can find a way to find some resolution. I think that was really beautiful. And speaking of retroactively enhancing things, there were two things I also really loved that enhanced the Spider-Man movies and also the MCU as a whole in this film. Some thematic elements that I really dig is the spider sense always was like a point of contention, right? Like, people didn't feel like he really had spider sense in the Home Trilogy, and then when he did in No Way Home, it was portrayed in a very specific way. I think beautifully. I love the slow-mo. I love the way they navigate it, but it felt not quite as strong or not quite as consistent. I love that using the other storyline and him evolving more into a spider, we get to have something that is much more traditional spider sense. The dodging of the ninja stars felt so much like the Tobey Maguire punch dodge with Flash Thompson. We get much more of a traditional spider sense. That's another way it enhances Spider-Man as a whole. We get the Aunt May conversation we wanted from the Home Trilogy. We get a more traditional spider sense that I'm excited to see evolve and grow, and we see that he embraces his senses, and we see that he embraces this new form of self. So I'm excited to see his power set also elevate with this spider puberty that he developed here. And then the other one is just a fun one. Thematically, I love when the big questions and kind of open-ended, we don't know how to handle that plot hole, is addressed in film, and they can't really do it in the Avengers because the tone doesn't work, and they can't really do it at this point, post Endgame this many years, but they can address it in a Spider-Man film, in a college course. Of course, you can talk about, why didn't Thanos just make twice the food? And I love that that is a big question. I love that that's something that we could actually have a full-on conversation about, and they know they can't do that here, so they make it into a Hulk joke, and I love that we get to address it. We get to discuss, like, he wanted to save lives. Why is he killing half when he can grow more? Like, all of that conversation, and then a Hulk smash reference. That is how you do a joke. That is how you have a very open-ended question at least get acknowledged in a film. So those were some of the Easter eggs and references I thought were worth at least having a little bit of dialogue about. If you guys want any of those videos, especially the one with the inhibitor collar, please let me know, and I might make that as well. So let's talk about what that consequence is, why a mutant inhibitor collar is relevant, because Jean Grey. Internet, your boy got carried away. This was meant to be a 10 or 15 minute video, and recording it ended up being 35 minutes of sweet, sweet Easter eggs and references. So we're going to split it in two parts. This is going to end this video, and I'm going to kick off the next video with all my Jean Grey Easter eggs, references, X-Men, all those details, then get into the home trilogy, right into the MCU references, and end it with Easter eggs and details about the very ending as well as the post-credit scene. So please keep your eyes peeled for part 2. But in the meantime, please, right now, let me know in the comments what you thought of this video. What of my favorite Easter eggs you've heard so far did you most enjoy? What did you think about the thematic elements that I brought up at the end of this video? I would love to know your thoughts in those comments. Also, please, especially if you want to watch part 2 with all things movie references, hit that subscription bell. I'm going to be talking about Jean Grey. I'm going to be talking this movie quite a bit. As you can tell, I wanted to make a 10-minute video and it turned into 35. So I have a lot of things I want to discuss, so let me know in the comments, but also hit that subscription bell for lots more Spider-Man Brand New Day coverage. Thank you guys for being here. Hit a like in this video while you're pressing buttons. Press like, press a comment, press subscribe, and stay tuned for part 2 because there's way more to talk about. This was a lot. I appreciate you guys.